Hello, my name is Patricia. I'm a first-generation Beatles fan. This is the second video that I'm going to try to make. The first one I made was about 2 weeks ago, I'd say, when I contributed to Rachel's Ghost Beatles vinyl tag. Now, at the time, I was not planning on having a channel. I actually didn't realize that you had to have a channel in order to post a video. But here you go. Now I have a channel, and then I had to decide whether I was going to try to do anything more with it or not. And so, as you see, I'm here today, so I'm going to give it another try. Now, I've decided to call my channel A Little Beatles Corner, and that's exactly all it's going to be, A Little Beatles Corner. So every month or so, I will try to post a video, and I'll try to make it as short as I can, and, kind of go along and see whether people like it or don't like it or, whatever, and go from there. Before I go on to today's topic, though, I do want to thank Mazzy, and I want to thank Harry's Music Room for giving me a tip on changing around my iPhone camera in order to try to produce a better video. So if you have more comments and criticism, or anybody does, please help me out. I really appreciate it. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the Cavern Club. I got interested in the Cavern Club, probably like a lot of people have, in relationship to the Beatles and what the Cavern Club did for the Beatles, and Mersey Beat, Merseyside groups in general. So at some point, like in the 80s and 90s probably, I started collecting a couple pieces of memorabilia. I don't have a lot, but I have some little tidbits that I will be showing you. So we're going to have this video in two parts. Part one will be when it opened in the late 50s through the 60s, and then the second part next month will be the 70s through the closure, and then the reopening of the Cavern Club that you see if you go there today. My first trip to Liverpool was in 1984. I have been there 3 times, so I have seen some changes over the years, mostly which I don't like, but that's another story. All right, so we'll get into the topic of the Cavern Club today, and I do have a few notes because it's all about the dates and when things happened. All right, so we'll get started. So in January 1957, the Cavern Club was opened as a jazz club at 10 Matthew Street in Liverpool. Before that, it had been a warehouse, and it had been a bomb shelter in World War II. And it's probably a Victorian building, or was built in the Victorian times, I'm not sure. But anyway, it was around for a long time. So a man by the name of Alan, A-L-A-N, Snyder, S-Y-N-E-R, a Liverpool guy. He had been in Paris, and he saw a club in Paris that was also called the Cavern Club, basically in Parisian language. And he wanted to replicate the Cavern Club that he'd seen there as a jazz club in Liverpool. So that's exactly what he did when he opened it in January of 1957. At the time, he also started allowing, I guess, some skiffle groups to come in and play here and there, because skiffle was becoming kind of a more mainstream form of music and more popular at that time, late 50s. And from what I read, he didn't like rock and roll at all, so that's where he got into it with John Lennon, when John Lennon wound up playing there. So that's how it got started in January 1957. So in August of 1957, which is about 7 months later, enters John and the Quarrymen, and they had their first appearance there that was actually advertised as an appearance there. And they started playing rock and roll, I think Elvis Presley and, that kind of thing. And Alan told them to stop playing it or else. So he was pretty strict about that. So that was about 7 months after the Cavern Club did open. Then in October of 1959, which is probably what I want to just say off the top of my head, a year and a half or so later, Alan sold the club to Ray McFall. And then Ray McFall started the Cavern Club up as a little bit of a different venue. In the meantime, Alan went off to London, and he actually became a manager, or the manager, of the Marquee Jazz Club, which I think is the same Marquee that the Rolling Stones, played in the early days and whatever. So he was an interesting man. I'm going to try to look into him a little bit more and see if I can find out anything more about his history, because I find that to be such an interesting tidbit of information. So anyway, back to Ray McFall, who bought the Cavern Club in October of 1959. He started having blues groups come in, and then the beat groups come in, and they became like a regular, basically what the club was going to be all about. In early 1961, which is probably a year and 4 months afterward, enters Bob Wooler, who entered the club, and he became what they called the compere, or probably is also known as a host and a DJ, and he organized all the Cavern Club lunchtime sessions, and he was there throughout the whole Beatle period and beyond, and I think probably until it actually kind of closed, and he was a big part of the whole scene. So that was that. And then in February 1961, so that would be over a year and a half, 2 years, something like that. I'd have to calculate. I should have calculated. The Beatles played February 9th, which is interesting for us American people who worship the Beatles in February of that year, in 1964. So February 9th, 1961, the Beatles played the first of 292 gigs within a 30-month period, and their last performance was August 3rd, 1963. So 30 months between the start and finish of all the 292 times that the Beatles played there. Now, in November 9th, 1961, which is probably about, 7 months or so after the Beatles started playing there. So they say that Brian Epstein walked in there, and you know what happened between Brian Epstein and the Beatles after that. So the Beatles had been playing there a while, apparently, before Brian really got wind of it. So I don't think Brian really caught them in the early days when they first started playing these 292 gigs. Well, but he probably heard about it eventually, and so he wound up there in November of 1961. So the Beatles played, and they came and went, and then other groups, Mersey groups were playing there. And I guess after a while, some of the heyday of the Mersey groups, the Mersey beat, has gone elsewhere to London and, kind of moved on. So in 1966, Ray McFall became bankrupt, and then he had to close the Cavern Club. So we had it from 1959 until 1966, which is a pretty good run. So that's part one of the Cavern Club as far as, chronological dates go. So now I'll give you just a couple of things that I have right here for today for Cavern Club stuff. So the first thing I'm going to show you is just this book here. It's called The Best of Fellas. It's about Bob Wooler. And it's an interesting read if you're into the Cavern Club and the characters that were involved in the Cavern Club, and he was definitely one of those. So I'm sure you can get this book somewhere. I've had it for a while, but I'm sure you can get it. By Spencer Lee, who's written a lot of books. So that's that. And then I actually went to 1984 when I was there the first time. I went to Beatles convention. It was the fourth one that they had. It was at St. George's Hall. And I kept the flyer from this. And so while I was there, they had guests there like they have at the Fest for Beatles fans every year. And so that year in 1984, actually Ray McFall was there, Pat Delaney, who was the bouncer at the Cavern Club, he stood outside, and then Tony Barrow was there. So I got three autographs. Well, I got 3 autographs on this. This is like a replica thing that they did in 1984. It's called On the Scene at the Cavern, and it gets some history, a lot of pictures, you know. I'll show you a few. Let's see. You know, gives like a little history of it, and it's kind of interesting book. So I got 3 autographs while I was there at that 1984 Liverpool convention. And so they're Pat Delaney, Ray McFall, and Tony Barrow, and I will show you them. Hopefully you can see them. I think these autographs are pretty hard to get now. Pat Delaney and Ray McFall especially. So I'm happy to have those. And then I bought this is 1964 Cavern Club card. And then that's the back of it. Oh, sorry, that's the back of it. And I bought it because I bought it off a dealer or somebody. I don't know who I bought it off of, because Bob Wooler was just signing them, and they were getting sold. So I originally bought it because of Bob Wooler right there, and there's a sticker of, you know, what he was a DJ and all that stuff. So then after that, I had this Cavern Club card, and I started taking it to Beatle Fest, or the Fest for Beatles fans, as they call it now, every year when I went there. If there was somebody that I thought maybe I wanted to get an autograph from, I'd put it in this card, so that's exactly what I did. So I got Billy J. Kramer, and another one I don't know offhand who it is. I'd have to figure that out at this point. I got Ruth McCartney, Paul's half-sister, Louise Harrison, George's sister, Billy Kinsey from the Mersey Beats, and Pauline Sutcliffe, Stuart Sutcliffe's sister, all right in there. And then, let's see, some pages you can't really write on because it's already printed, you know, so it's hard to do every page. Then I got one of the Undertakers on one side, and then under Bob Wooler I got one of the Searchers and Sam Leach, who's another person that needs to be talked about at some point. And then on the last 2 pages I have Frida Kelly, who was the Beatles fan club secretary, Astor Kircher, Sam Leach, Jerry Morrison of Jerry and the Pacemakers, and Pete Best. So it's kind of a one-of-a-kind little item that I kind of concocted to make. And then the other thing I want to show you today is I actually bought a Cavern brick. This was in 1983 and 84. They were selling them. And it's just a brick. This is one of 5,000. This is one of 5,000. And I was trying to figure out how much I paid for it at the time. And lo and behold, I actually have a January 1984 receipt from place called the Cavern Mecca in Liverpool that was there at the time. That was, I guess they were, you know, selling them for the charity. So right there, it says Cavern brick, 5 pounds, and calculated into American money was $7 and whatnot, $7.50 or something. So I paid very little for this, actually. I think it was more to ship it than it was to buy it. Now you can buy them, you know, here and there, but they are on the expensive side, and I guess I made a good investment then. Okay, so that is all for today. I appreciate you watching what I have prepared for you. And as I said, give me any comments and criticisms. I would really appreciate it. Good and bad, I can take it. So have a good day. I will see you next time, and long live the Beatles forever.